And speaking of that, you alluded to it, we saw anti-Israel protests in Canada. Now, they descended into chaos at the weekend and actually turned violent. Have a look at this. I mean, that was just appalling in itself, but what's even more appalling is where was the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? Well, he was actually dancing at a Taylor Swift concert. Alex, clearly these protests were filled with hate and anti-Semitism, and yet the leader of Canada was out there dancing and taking selfies, and it took him hours upon hours to even release a statement about what was witnessed. How bad of a look is this?
Well, I have to clarify, there's no crime in dancing at a Taylor Swift concert, because I'd be guilty of the same offence, even though those moves are partly criminal, the ones that I saw just there. But the crime is in the fact that Justin Trudeau, and this is reminiscent of our government here, and the Canadian government has largely been in lockstep with Anthony Albanese's government. They've signed a lot of joint letters condemning Israel, articulating their position on the conflict. The fact that he has allowed the situation to descend to such a point where the Jewish community with which I'm in close contact in Canada have been crying out for months and months and months about their schools and their synagogues being firebombed and vandalised, an absolutely unbearable situation on university campuses. It all sounds very reminiscent of our situation here. And the government has done nothing. And we've seen weakness in terms of rhetoric. He was asked a question about the ICC and gave the most waffling, pitiful response one could imagine. And again, when you're dealing with absolute thugs and lowlifes and common vandals, and we saw that there, they're glorifying the final solution. They'll claim they're merely anti-Zionist and anti-Israel, but they're talking about the Nazi program to exterminate the Jews. And these are the people the Western governments are regularly pandering to and recalibrating their policies around. It's scandalous.
It's absolutely scandalous. Speaking of scandalous, Alex, Hamas said today that an Israeli woman held hostage in Gaza since October last year has died. Now, they've not, to my knowledge, named the woman or said how she died, but I wanted to ask you about this because, to me, the biggest outrage in everything that's happening right now is that this woman is one of 97 Israelis still being held hostage by Hamas terrorists, and the world doesn't seem outraged by that anymore. It's almost like they've been forgotten in all of this.
I think that's a sad reality, that they are forgotten, and we haven't forgotten them. Certainly the Jewish world, we continue to pray for them and work for their release on a daily basis, and good people like yourselves haven't forgotten about them, but our government has forgotten about them. They don't talk about this. They talk about recognising a Palestinian state and arresting the Israeli democratically elected leader if he dares come to the country. This is what they're talking about, and the integrity of the ICC that issues these arrest warrants. Meanwhile, nearly 100 people are languishing in hell, second by second, including children as young as 2 and 5 years old. And the fact that no one is talking about this at a government level, no international action is being done, whether it's the UN or so-called human rights organisations or the Red Cross or our government, that is a national shame. And really, when we see the priorities of this government on the conflict, to take every cheap shot at Canada, Israel, it's an abandonment of those people, those innocent people who are suffering so gravely, so deeply.
Yeah, it really is shocking. Alex Ripchin, always really good to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this evening.